The Independent is reporting that it has obtained a leaked recording of the EU chief's Brexit negotiator, or the EU's chief Brexit negotiator, I should say, Michel Barnier, saying that Brexit trade negotiations can't be finished within 11 months. The Prime Minister has said that if he wins the election, the UK will fully exit the EU by December 2020 after the transition. Mr Barnier says that is unrealistic. Well, with us is Georgina Wright. She is Senior Researcher at the Institute for Government. Hello. You're just back from Brussels.
I am indeed.
So they've obviously been watching the campaign and they've seen this pledge from Boris Johnson that we will definitely be leaving after this transition December 2020. What do they say about it?
It's really interesting. I think, they're assuming that the Conservative Party will win a majority, though they are planning for all outcomes. Of course, if the Conservative Party does win a sizable majority, their assumption is that the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, will get his Brexit deal through Parliament, and then that leaves 11 months to negotiate the future deal, which is going to be a lot more complicated. So what happens? If the Prime Minister wants a really detailed deal, he will have no choice but to extend that transition. That's what they're thinking. Though clearly throughout the campaign, the Prime Minister has been very clear that he doesn't want to extend that deadline. So that leaves the EU with an uncomfortable choice. Do they go for a detailed deal knowing that they might not be able to negotiate it, let alone pass it, because ratification becomes very complicated on the EU side? Or do they go for a very basic deal that covers, say, fish, for example, level playing field, some of those concerns, but not everything, which kind of leaves an incomplete deal?
I was just thinking, though, when they show up tomorrow for their end-of-year summit, we're not there. Of course, the UK's not been fully taking part in the European institutions for some time. We don't have a commissioner there at the moment, even at their urging that we should have. Do you think we've slowly been drifting away from the European family anyway over these last 3 years?
I guess it depends how you see it. The Prime Minister was very clear that he wouldn't be appointing a British Commissioner, and likewise he felt that British diplomats shouldn't take part in EU meetings that were not deemed of national interest. Now, the idea behind that was that you would then refocus diplomats' time on thinking about the future relationship. But of course, when you're not in the room, you're not around that table, it's very difficult to seize and understand where the EU is going. And of course, when you're thinking about the future relationship, the UK is changing, but the EU is changing also. So actually, when you listen to Michel Barnier and what he says is that, this is going to be a really complicated negotiation. Is 11 months' time sufficient if we think that it's taken over 2 years to negotiate this so-called divorce deal?
Georgina, can I ask you about Michel Barnier's comments? And what's the view in Brussels? Is that this speaking of just him trying to perhaps throw a spanner in the work at the last minute, or is this actually a widespread belief that this won't be possible to deliver a trade deal by the end of next year?
I mean, I obviously was not in the room, but if you look a little bit at how the EU conducts these negotiations, we know that Michel Barnier is going to be the chief sort of Brexit negotiator, and he very much acts on behalf of the EU 27. Now, of course, the Commission, who will be leading and at that negotiating table, certainly they've been very clear that they think 11 months is very ambitious, and that actually if the UK does not want to extend that transition period, then it would have to be a very basic deal. And I think that's the choice, really. Do we go for a detailed deal, in which case we really do need more time, or do we go for a very basic deal, but what does that entail and what would it look like, and where do the negotiations go after that?
Okay,
Georgina Wright, thank you very much.